Hey there, welcome to this week's episode of Next Level Play Therapy. If you have ever left a session wondering, did that work? Or I'm not sure what really happened in there, then today's session is for you. We're going to talk about what you can do to help your clients make more progress, usually more quickly, without having to do more. So that's what today's episode is about. Instead of feeling like you have to go search on Pinterest or check out more things in your Amazon cart. That's probably just me. I know it's not just me. Oh my gosh, I do so much. I don't even want to talk about my Amazon cart. I just love getting more. Actually, there's so much good stuff there. Anyways, so no shame if you're like me and you are filling up your Amazon cart or your wish list with things. The thing is, though, that's fine. It's not really that is the problem. I think what gets most play therapists stuck or derailed is not using intention and knowing what to do, when to do it, or how to do it. And so oftentimes what I find is we just kind of lean a little heavily into our intuition, which is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. But if it's intuition without direction or structure to know where we're going or what the process is to get where we're going, then it ends up being a little bit more like throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping something sticks. And that doesn't really work. And I've been there. I get it. And it's really frustrating. So one of there's a couple of things that I want to talk about, actually three things that I want to talk about that I have found over the years that are actually going to help you move the needle quicker without having to do more, without having to take more trainings, without having to read more books, without having to go scroll the internet to figure out. If you get the foundational aspects of these things, then when you get lost, not if you get lost, but when you get lost, then you can get back on track more quickly and get the results for your clients that you really want to get for them, which is to help them heal. That's the whole point of becoming a play therapist, is the fact that we do this because we want to make a difference, we want to help children heal, and we want to make their lives better. So that's what today's episode is. We are going to be talking about a concept I've talked about in the past. So if you've watched any of my live stream episodes or listened to any of my previous podcast episodes, you've probably heard me talk about this. I talk about it a lot, and that is that fancy term called case conceptualization. And before your eyes glaze over, or you're like, this sounds way too much like grad school. That made no sense to me. And I don't even really know what the heck she's talking about. I'm gonna talk a little bit about what that is and why it's so important. And the idea of case conceptualization is, in a nutshell, that you have, I call it being your clinical detective. You have done your clinical detective work to go in and ask all the questions about who, what, when, where, and how, frequency, intensity, and duration. And then you've gathered all those informations. You have not skipped that psychosocial assessment step, especially with the parents. you have not skipped that step so that you can use that information within within the context. Your theory model is going to influence your case conceptualization. So case conceptualization is you've taken all of that information and now you have formulated what is your working hypothesis, so to speak. That is a term that I learned years ago and I grabbed hold of it when I took training way back, over 20 years ago now, from Eliana Gale, and she used this term, working hypothesis. I like to give credit where credit is due. That's not a term I came up with, but I love it and I use it all the time. So this idea of working hypothesis is you've taken the information and you've formulated what you believe is at the root of the problem. So you do your initial case formulation or case conceptualization, AKA working hypothesis, and then you use that over time throughout the treatment process as you're gathering more information, session to session to session. You're using that information to fine tune and adjust as needed your case conceptualization. So it's not a one and done. It's let's get our initial one, then start working with client and parents, maybe family, and we're going to use that to help us better understand what are the driving forces to what is going on, the problem that clients are experiencing. So you're looking at what is activating it, when it happens, where it happens, what activates it, frequency, intensity, and duration, and then what are the patterns that are sustaining it in the child's life. And so one of the ways that we do this, and we're going to talk a little bit about this as well, that idea of community. And in my online play therapy communities, I have two. One is Play Therapy Academy, and that's more of the I call that one more like the VIP experience, mostly because it's kind of structured. We meet a couple times a month. We the meetings are structured so we can maximize the benefit, the learning for everybody, and getting to the bottom of what's going on to help clients. But also, how are we learning how to use play therapy? And so what we'll do is, and then also now Play Therapy Elevation Circle, which is my play therapy community online membership, where we meet once a month for consultation. We'll do a book club in there. We're reading Being a Brainwise Therapist, and how do you apply that to play therapy? So in these consultation meetings, these mastermind meetings, if you're in Elevation Circle, we will go through, we will take that information about what's been going on, and then how do we figure out what is driving this behavior or driving the problem? Because really, how do you know what to do in sessions if you haven't figured out what is going on? Like, why is it happening? How do you know what to do? That's when people end up using the spaghetti against the wall method, where we're just kind of going along instead of really clinically thinking about this in a strategic way to better understand what's going on. And this is, I think this is even true for child-centered play therapy. And here's what I mean by that. When you're using child-centered play therapy, you still are formulating your hypothesis about what's going on. You're using that information about what's going on in the sessions to kind of get a sense of where the child is in the treatment process, like what stage of play therapy are they in, what are the themes that are going on in the session, and you kind of use that information to help you understand is your client making progress? Where are they in the change process when you're working with parents in the parent-only sessions, because they are not in the sessions if you are using child-centered play therapy. And then how do you use that information with privacy and parameters around it to help parents facilitate the change at home? And even though you're still allowing the child to lead the session, even with your tracking, you're not leading with your tracking, you're still using case conceptualization to help you figure out what's going on. And it's probably going to influence what you're tracking and how you're tracking it to kind of allow what's going on in the session to allow that to kind of bubble up to the surface, so to speak. So your case conceptualization is critical for really being intentional and having a sense of what is going on with your clients. And so I think kind of training your brain to look for the details. We do that a lot in the consultation mastermind meetings in Elevation Circle and in Play Therapy Academy when we do the consultation, because that, if we're going to give support in helping you know what to do, when to do it, and making sense of what's going on, we need to figure out what the problem is. What are the roots of the problem? Why is it happening? Frequency, intensity, and duration, so you know if things are getting better or not getting better. These are all really important things, and it's the first step to really understanding what's going on so you know what to do, which is the next thing. Your play therapy model really does matter. Why does it matter? Like, I use an integrative approach, right? That's what we talk about, an integrative approach. This was several years ago, a therapist, I was in conversation and we were chatting, and the response was, oh, we're out of grad school and now we're in the real world. She didn't say this exactly. This is my paraphrase of the way I heard it. And so, we all just use an integrative approach, which my response back was, well, even when you're using an integrative approach, you still have the theory models that you learned, and those are still influencing what you do and how you do it and when you do it and how you make sense of what's going on in there. So if you're using blending 2 or 3 theoretical models, you're still conceptualizing it through those lenses. And I would say that's true even for play therapy. Your play therapy model, even if you're using an integrative model, and some integrative models kind of blend theories together, and some integrative models have a specific kind of foundational theory, and then they'll blend some other theory models in there. They're still making sense of what's going on. And in those theory models, there's that influences how you show up in the play therapy session. So if I'm using child-centered play therapy, I'm going to show up in a way that's true to child-centered play therapy. So I'm going to be tracking. I'm not going to be leading. I'm going to be following. I'm going to be talking in a certain way. And that's probably going to be different than if I'm using maybe a CBT play therapy model, or maybe even a more, because that CBT is very directive, or what are some other models that are, or DBT, if I'm using some of those strategies in there. If I'm using prescriptive, I'm probably leading. I would say still we're using tracking, which is across the board for all play therapy sessions, but all play therapy models, but how we do that's going to be influenced by our theoretical model. So, um, your theory model is really going to influence what you do in the sessions, how you do it, when you do it, and when they're ready for change. When they're ready for discharge. And so it's also going to influence how you make sense of it. If I'm using child-centered play therapy, I'm making sense of what's going on through that theoretical lens. If I'm using attachment theory and maybe interpersonal neurobiology, which are my two faves, then I'm going to be making sense of it in that way. The likelihood, if I'm using that model, or theoretical model, the likelihood I'm going to at some point get parents into the play therapy session is pretty high, because that's my theory model, and that is influencing what I do, when I do it, and how I do it. So your theory model is really important. It's kind of like your GPS or your roadmap. So your case conceptualization, well, when my mouth works, your case conceptualization is how you make sense of what is going on. Then your theory model takes how you're making sense of it, how are you identifying what the problem is, and then tells you what to do and how to do it and when to do it. That's going to influence the stages of play therapy and what you're doing in each of those stages of play therapy. So a lot of times when we're meeting in Play Therapy Academy or Elevation Circle, and we're doing our consultation calls or our mastermind calls, then we are looking at and identifying first, what's the case conceptualization? Like, how are you making sense of this? What theory model are you using? And that's going to influence what you're doing in the session. So when we're talking about when we're giving support and ideas for how to help your clients, if you're feeling stuck, then those two components are critical in order to provide the support. So if we know that you like using child-centered play therapy, then when we're giving feedback, we know how to provide that feedback in a way that is consistent with the model that you're using to help you use that model to move the needle forward for your client. So, and I think here's the other thing, which brings me to the next point, which I think is the secret sauce for making a difference for your clients in the play therapy treatment process. And that is the idea of relationship. So there's two kinds of relationships. There's the therapeutic relationship that you have with your client. That, to me, is the glue. Like when we don't know what to do or when to do, or something just happened in the session and we need a minute to get it sorted out in our heads, then we lean into relationship. There is so much power in helping clients feel seen, heard, and understood, experiencing unconditional positive regard and empathy. That presence in the therapy room, regardless of whatever age the person is sitting in front of you in that therapeutic space, feeling seen, heard, and understood, feeling unconditional positive regard and empathy, that in and of itself creates healing. And in our play therapy elevation circle, we're reading the book Being a Brainwise Therapist, and a lot of what Bonnie Badenoch. So she uses that interpersonal neurobiology theoretical lens, and then she in the book talking about really how do you take that theory and what does that look like when you're applying it? And so one of the things that she talks about from an interpersonal neurobiology standpoint is how that experience, that therapeutic experience in the playroom or in the therapeutic space, if you're meeting with a child, a teenager, or an adult, that in and of itself is healing. That in and of itself will rewire some neurobiology, some of those neural connections for healing to improve integration. And Daniel Siegel talks a lot about the importance of integration. That's how we move the needle forward and facilitate healing, because that is the lens that he uses. That is the lens that Bonnie Badenoch uses in the work that she does, that she spells out in her book, Being a Brainwise Therapist. So that therapeutic presence to me is the secret sauce. We need the other things. It's a balance. Sometimes we um, lean heavily into our case conceptualization. Sometimes we lean more heavily into what does our play therapy model say. Sometimes we lean more heavily into that therapeutic relationship. Sometimes we can do a really good version of all three of them at one time. That's when the magic happens, and it's a process. It's ebb and flow. Nothing is done perfectly all the time. And when you're not sure what to do, we lean into that therapeutic relationship and be fully present in the moment. To me, that's the magic of child-centered play therapy, is just that therapeutic use of self for presence, helping to feel seen, heard, and understood, and that unconditional positive regard and empathy. But even with child-centered play therapy, there's a structure to it, and there's intention behind it. And when all else matters, regardless of what play therapy model you're using, leaning into that therapeutic relationship is what's going to help keep things moving forward. It's going to help clients stay in the treatment process. It's going to help them get through the hard parts, because they can experience that support from you in the playroom, including parents. Parents need to experience this as well with you. And that might look a little different than it does with the kids. And here's the other part of that with the secret sauce. So we are wired to connect. We know that from an attachment standpoint, from that neurobiology standpoint. As human beings, we are wired to connect in varying degrees. Some of them, we all have varying degrees of what connection means for us and how much we need or don't need. But we all fundamentally need it. We all fundamentally need access to support. And so as play therapists, we need that too. How are you getting the support that you need? How do you get that support in your personal life? And what does that support look like in your your professional life? Professionally, where are you getting that support? As I talk to people all over the US, mostly, sometimes outside the US, as I talk to people, one of the things that I hear all the time is that they are the only play therapists in their agency. They are the only play therapist in their community. They might be in private practice, so they're the only ones in their practice. And especially when you're coming out of graduate school, I can't tell you how many times I hear this from people coming out of graduate school, which is, I know I want to work with kids, and I'm in this agency. I'm the only kid therapist, and my supervisor is awesome, and they only work with adults, so they don't really know how to help me with this. And I'm kind of surprised, but not anymore because I hear it so much. But that was my experience almost 35 years ago, before there was internet, before we had access to all these things. I had seen play therapy in action when I was a special education teacher back in the mid 1980s. And the school psychologist and school social worker were learning this play therapy thing and sharing it with me. And we did a play therapy group with my class of, I think I had 10 kids in the self contained special education class for children with, I hate this term, emotional disturbance, emotional problems. They couldn't stay in the regular classroom because their emotions were too big and it interfered with their learning. So I had witnessed it. I knew what it was, and then went back to graduate school, and there wasn't really much in graduate school. Well, there wasn't really anything about play therapy. I had a diagnosis class for kids. That was helpful. And all my training was family systems training. But there wasn't really much about play therapy. And then we've come a long way since then. Play therapy has pretty much become like the go-to therapy for kids, and yet we still have situations where therapists are in agencies working with children and not really having access to the support that they need in order to do that. And so um, it's kind of hard being a play therapist sometimes when you're the only play therapist around, or the only play therapist in your area, or even as a seasoned play therapist, sometimes we need help. I get stuck sometimes. Um, and here's what I've noticed in the play therapy elevation circle. I've also noticed this in Play Therapy Academy, the consultation part. If you ask people in those two different memberships what is really the secret sauce, is it just solely my almost 35 years of experience in the child and adolescent mental health field, or is it that community where we get together and it's my 35 years of experience plus all of the experience of the other play therapists. And I that is my favorite part. Like, I love doing these consultation meetings or mastermind meetings, and staffing clients or discussing issues that are relevant to play therapy that are coming up. And we're talking and we're going through the case conceptualization. We're identifying what the issue is. We know what play therapy model you want to use. And now it's not only my experience, but it's also all of the resources and experience of the people in the community, getting their ideas, and I can't tell you how many times we've had a discussion and I've kind of homed in on one thing, and then another person in the group will mention something and they'll share some of their insights, and we're all like, "Oh my gosh, that is so good." And it kind of changes the conversation, and now we're thinking about that in addition to the other, and that gives more people ideas. And then one person will say something and that gives another person an idea. And I feel like we get a much more well-rounded, and people leave feeling supported, feeling seen, feeling heard. If they've had a rough time, then they don't have to explain what play therapy is, because we all get it. And we can kind of give some support if you've had a rough day, like we're all, we hate when that happens, or a rough conversation, or something happened in the playroom. I had that happen like years ago when I was in private practice. I was in a group, and there was another person with their private practice, and we kind of helped each other out. We were each other's support system. And so this thing happened, and it freaked me the heck out, man. And I leaned into relationship and got through the session doing my child-centered play therapy tracking. Um, and I called my friend up and I was like, "Oh my gosh, you have to talk to me. This thing just happened." And then we both kind of laughed, and she's like, "You're freaking out." I'm like, "Yes, I'm freaking out." And so she gave me some ideas, and she kind of helped me through it. And when she ran into some things, I kind of helped her through it. But that's just the thing. We didn't have to do it alone. We had some support with each other. So if you have that, that is awesome. But if you don't have that, then I don't think being in a play therapy community or consultation membership or program, I don't think that's a luxury. We talk a lot about it, but we kind of act like it's a luxury, or we think, oh, I don't have the time. And my thought is what I found doing this for the the memberships, Play Therapy Academy, I've been doing it, I think, since 2019, I think, or something like 6 or 7 years maybe. Um, and now Elevation Circle, we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary. In March will be 1 year that I launched it for people who didn't need Play Therapy Academy. One of the things that I have found in these is that people feel like they get actually more time back, because what I might have spent hours or days trying to figure out myself, I can bring it to the community, get some feedback, and get support pretty quick. And also, what I find is when we're having these meetings, group community consultation meetings or mastermind meetings, then one person might be presenting, but that reminds another person of, oh, yeah, that happened to me, that same thing. Oh, I think that's what's going on with my client. So there's this synergistic learning among all of the members, um, that kind of helps everybody out. And I think that's the benefit. I think that's what helps us work smarter, not harder. I think that's what helps us bring all of that case conceptualization and how am I using my play therapy model? How I'm feeling stuck. I'm like, I'm getting triggered by this thing. So I can't show up with unconditional positive regard and empathy. So that kind of helps me figure out what that's all about and then get back on track with that. I think I think we are wired to connect. I think as play therapists, we understand the power and the importance of being connected. And I think in the play therapy arena, field, or whatever you want to call it, that idea of having a space, a safe space, private space, confidential space where I can take what's going on with my clients and get that support, knowing that I'll get the support I need. I won't get judgment. It'll be private, and I can use that to help me make a difference and avoid feeling burned out, overwhelmed, and second guessing my career decisions. That am I really meant to be a play therapist? Because we've all had that. I know I've had that. And being part of a community helped me get through those. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about this idea of being part of a community, which was the catalyst for me starting Play Therapy Elevation Circle. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about Play Therapy Elevation Circle. I'm also going to talk about a free webinar that I have coming up, where we're going to talk about how to stop second guessing yourself and what do you need in order to kind of move the needle forward. And let me do a quick recap first, which is basically before you can figure out what you need to do or what what's going to help your clients who really need to figure out what's going on, what is at the root of the problem, and what is sustaining that problem. That is the first thing that you need to figure out. And sometimes we need help figuring that out because we're stumped. And so being part of a community can help with that. And that's going to help you then know what to do. And you're going to use your play therapy model to guide your decision making and help you understand what it is you need to do, when you need to do it, and how you need to do it. Your play therapy model also is going to influence how do you know where they are in the stage of play therapy treatment change? What play therapy stage are they in? So if you're trying to figure out if it's working, then you need to use your play therapy model to figure out what stage that they're in. And that is also a place where your play therapy community, your support system, can help you figure that out when you're feeling a little stuck and you're not sure, or maybe you're second guessing yourself. And then the third thing is, this is the secret sauce, and that is that therapeutic relationship. It is the glue that holds everything together. So when you are not sure what to do or you're feeling a little stuck, lean into that play therapy, that therapeutic relationship, maybe even a little bit more until you have a little time to sort that out. And don't forget to build that therapeutic rapport with parents. They're going to be the key to that long-term change of when you're not around anymore, and are they still on the right track, so to speak? Are they still doing well after they've completed play therapy? Children can't be their own therapeutic agents of change. So basically what you're doing is you're building that therapeutic rapport with parents to help them be that therapeutic agent of change at home and in the community in their everyday life, for their child, helping their child know what to do and giving their child the support that they need, helping parents read the cues of their child so they know what to do. And so that therapeutic relationship is really, really important. And I feel like we get the fact that it's the therapeutic relationship is important, and we tend to really, where I find people get stuck a lot is the case conceptualization. And then, am I actually using my play therapy model to fidelity? Or if I'm integrating, what theory models am I integrating? And then who's supporting you? Where are you getting support? Who's helping you when you're feeling stuck? Where do you go when you're second guessing yourself and maybe your imposter syndrome is kicked in and you're thinking, I don't think I'm cut out to be a play therapist? And maybe in the rare cases, maybe that's true. But what I find overall, the vast majority of cases is that you are called to make a difference in the lives of children and their families to help them heal. What's probably happened is you've gotten burned out, or you're not sure what to do because you're still learning and you need more support. And so that's where being in a community can be really helpful. And if you are wanting a little bit more support and you want to kind of understand things, then I understand how to work smarter, not harder, so to speak. And you need some um, strategies for being more intentional and getting better outcomes for your clients. And I want to invite you to an upcoming free webinar that I have. It's going to be on Sunday, January 25th at 4 p.m. Pacific time. It's 7 p.m. Eastern time. How to stop second guessing every clinical decision, even with complex cases. That's the free webinar. It's about an hour. And if you're interested, registration is going to close soon. So you'll definitely want to pop over to my website at rhplaytherapytraining.com. That's rhplaytherapytraining.com, Renewing Hearts Play Therapy Training. Check out the free webinar that I have coming up and register soon. There will be a recording especially for those of you that are living outside of the United States, and the time zone conversion might be a little rough for you. But if you attend live, there are some, I have a gift for those who are attending live. So definitely want to make sure you can attend live. You can ask questions if you attend live. So those are the other benefits. So we're going to post the links in the comments. So if you want to pop over to the website at rhplaytherapytraining.com, register for the free webinar today, and I will see you next week. Bye for now.